Hello, folks. I am Dr. Larry McMahan. I am one of the research advisors for ASDRP. One of the things that you guys have to do as researchers is come up with a suitable project, explain how you're going to do that, and convince someone that it's a good idea. How do you go about doing this? I am going to suggest that the best way is to write a research proposal, which is pretty much industry standard for all researching groups. I'm going to put up a set of slides and we'll walk through that about how to create an adequate research proposal. Somebody let me know if you can see it.
We can almost see it. We can see it.
Okay. So before you start, you're thinking, oh, I just want to do research. Why do I have to do all this bureaucratic paperwork? Well, why write a research proposal? So the goal of the research proposal is twofold: to present and justify the need for a research program, to do the project to solve the problem, and to present the practical ways in which it should be conducted. Who is your audience? Prospective sponsors of the research. Okay, so in our case, it's ASDRP and your research advisor. Anyone who will judge or grade the research. If you want to do research and publish the results, then you're going to have a peer-reviewed report, and that is going to be graded by somebody outside. This is a great way to get started on that. Others working on the same field or in the same issues. If you are working on a particular area and it's an area that somebody else is working on, it helps a great deal to coordinate your efforts so that someone else who is doing similar research knows what you're working on and you know what they're working on. And finally, on your own research team, it serves as a template to tell your researchers what needs to be done in order to accomplish. Finally, an important reason for writing a research proposal is to provide a template for the research report, which will be the culmination of your work. This is the document that you are going to try and get published, and it is amazing how similar your research proposal is going to look to the final research report. What I'm suggesting here is that you start writing early, you keep track of everything that you've done, and when it comes time to write the research report, you don't have to go into your cubbyhole for a week grinding out a bunch of words, because you got it all done while you were doing the research itself. So before you start to write, so you may think that writing the research proposal is just like doing the research. You just sit down and do it. Well, that's partly true, but it really helps to have a good idea of what you're trying to accomplish. You may have a direct idea of what you want to do, or you may have an area in which you want to work. In other cases, your first step is a literature survey to answer the following questions. So before you write, you're going to have to read. What is the current state of knowledge in the area that you're investigating? If you have a specific question, has anyone tried answering this question before? And what results did they get? What open questions remain if partial answers exist? And what is the next thing that you would want to do? If every question that was answered in this research area has been answered, what areas does that lead to? Every answer in research should lead to a new question that says, what do we do next? On the other hand, if you do not have a specific question, if you are just trying to do work in a given field, and you are looking for questions in that field that are unopened, what are the open questions in the field? The literature review will be immensely helpful in answering that question. Can you find a question that is both doable and promises a benefit when answered? So doable for high school researchers means doable with the resources that you have. If you need a 20 billion electron volt collider, you're probably not going to do that research here. But if you need some robotics, or if you need some chemicals, or if you need a small Van de Graaff generator, or if you need some small piece of equipment, that is doable. So you need to be able to size your problem to fit the resources that you have available also. You're still not ready to write. Now is the time to brainstorm your ideas. You've got all this literature review done. You've read about what persons A, B, and C are doing in this area. And now you want to decide how to hone in on the problems that you want to solve. Look for the most feasible way to proceed. Sorry about the misspelling. There we go. Or do you need to modify your goals and methods to be successful? So now we've got all the stuff that we have, all of the investigation done to decide what we're going to do. So based on that investigation, what are we going to put in our proposal? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Or what question are you trying to answer? Why is it important to solve this problem? What benefit is provided by creating a solution to the problem? What have others done to try and solve the problem? What are you doing that is new, innovative, or different? If others have done some things to solve the problem, how are you going to take it further? Why is your work any better than what's been done in the past? And what specifically, here's where you get from generalities down to specifics. Exactly what do you hope to show, prove, or demonstrate? At this point, we have a pile of information that can be used to justify and conduct a research proposal. Now let's put it in an order so that it is understandable to your audience, so that it will convince the people that you need to convince, and so it will inform the people that you need to tell the members on your team how to conduct the research. Okay, so before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit about kinds of research. Research can generally be divided into two categories: data collection and analysis. This is usually done on a computer or done on the internet. It could actually be done physically. We actually have some groups here who are studying some issues involving plant growth and how different methods of watering and fertilizing and pest control can affect the production of vegetables. You have to take a lot of data in order to do that. Experiments, usually conducted in a physical lab. So if you are creating a new compound, if you're using that compound to test the medical effectiveness against it, against a particular disease. The agriculture one that we talked about actually stands between the two poles, doing a little bit of data collection and a little bit of experiment both. So keep that in mind as you try to explain your ideas to other people in your research proposal. So let's go back down to the format of the research proposal. Okay. Remember that we're going to take this research proposal and morph it as the research goes on into a research report. When you have a research report and you want to publish it, typically you have to submit it to a peer review committee that belongs to some publishing entity. If that's the case, then you need to be able to follow their outline for how to do the research report. Typically, it makes sense to do the research proposal in the same way. What I'm going to describe here is some very useful categories for your data, but I am not going to discuss the details of what each publishing entity requires. If you want to see some example reports, I have two listed at the bottom of the page here from the Journal of High School Science or the Journal of Young Investigators, and they have a page called For Authors. And the For Authors describes the format that they would like to see their papers recommended in. If you want a general guideline, look at the ResearchGate one. That will tell you a little bit about how to write a research proposal. So now let's go into some of the details. Top level, what sections to include? This is a title page. So the title is a one-sentence summary of what you're trying to accomplish. Authors is the list of people who are working on your research area. And the keywords is the set of keywords that someone could use to find and identify your paper and find out what you have learned in this area. The next thing is an abstract. And the abstract is a brief description of the research. And by brief, I typically mean between a half a page and a page, most likely around 3/4 of a page. And it should explain what the problem is, what you're doing to solve it, and what you hope to show. The next thing after the abstract is the introduction or background. So that should be a more complete description of the problem, exactly what it is, what area it's in, and what why people should work on it. The next one is current work or competitive landscape. This is what others are doing right now and what you need to do to advance the state of knowledge. So this is any partial solutions to the problem that others have found or solutions to similar problems that are useful in terms of what you want to do in the research. The next one is materials and methods. And so this is going to differ somewhat depending on whether you're doing a review and calculation or whether you're doing a physical experiment. Detailed description of how you're going to address the problem or the question. If you're doing an experiment, a list of the chemicals that you need. If you are doing a project that requires the collection of data, the kind of data that you need to collect and where you hope to find them. Finally, there is results and conclusions. So results and conclusions are optional in the proposal, and it's required in the final paper. In general, what you should have is at least a few sentences about what you hope to uncover or discover. You should not say, I hope to find it one way or another. You should say, I hope to find out whether A works for B or not. And we will report that. Next is future work. Typically, this is not usually written in the proposal. This is written when the proposal morphs into a report. And then references and bibliography, or otherwise bibliography. The references should begin with your literature survey, and as you conduct your research and find out what people are doing, you will be adding to that during your research that you're doing in the first place. So, title page. A clear descriptive title, one-word sentence that conveys the nature of the research in a single phrase or sentence. Authors. Okay, there is a fair amount of what needs to go in here. The full name and affiliation of all the authors, preferably in the order of contribution to the research. If all are affiliated with the same organization, simply list the name and address directly after the authors. So all you researchers here at ASDRP, ASDRP is your organization. So you would list author A, author B, author C, author D, all affiliated with Aspiring Scholars Directed Research Program. If the researchers are affiliated with different organizations, either list the organization with each author or give each author a numerical subscript to provide to the numbered list of organizations. So authors is name and affiliated address. Keywords is a list of keywords somebody looking for this kind of research would search for. You'll get many of your keywords doing your literature review. As you do the literature review, you will find keywords on those items, and you will add those to your group list of keywords. And then as you find more references that directly address what you're doing, you will pick up their keywords, and you will find some keywords that are specific to your research that just stand out. Okay. A few words about integrity in writing. Avoid plagiarism, protect integrity. It is necessary for you to refer to other people's work when you're doing research. If you're going to do this, you have to give full attribution and not pretend that it's your ideas. If you give full attribution to every idea that you pick up, you will be avoiding plagiarism. Do not include facts or opinions gathered directly from other sites or publications without giving the attribution. If you are relying on a fact, quote only published peer-reviewed articles. In other words, if you are expressing an opinion that someone said, you should label it as opinion, and it doesn't have to be peer reviewed. But if you want to present something as a fact and you're quoting for someone, then you should rely on a direct quote from an expert or a quote of a published peer-reviewed article. Every statement, whether quoted or paraphrased, must refer to a referenced article in your bibliography. So whether you have a quoted line or whether you have a paraphrase or something, you should have a little number there that refers to a numbered bibliography item that says this idea came from this paper. If you're quoting word for word, use quotation marks. Do not quote full paragraphs. Quote only single sentences or short passages making a single point. Each of your references should be numbered like the example. It may be a URL or a printed article. So the number 1 is just a URL that has some opinions in it. It cannot be referred to as fact, but you can still say that so-and-so said such and such. Number 2 is a scholarly article that has been peer-reviewed, and so now you can refer to any facts in it as a factual piece of information. If a URL points to a published peer-reviewed article, include title, authors, journal, issue, and date. So that was avoiding plagiarism. Now we're going down the list again. We talked about authors. We talked about how to structure to avoid plagiarism. Now we're going to write some stuff now that we know how to write. The abstract is a concise description of the problem you're trying to solve, how you plan to do it, and what you hope to prove or discover. The abstract may optionally go on the title page, depending on the space available and the length of the abstract. In general, your abstract should be about 3 paragraphs. If it is less than half a page, it is usually too short. If it is more than a page, it is probably too long. I have seen a couple that went a page and a quarter that you needed that in order to explain everything. It often helps to not write the abstract until you have written the introduction and materials and methods, because now you can be more clear and concise in your abstract, being more detailed while writing a shorter set of paragraphs. Okay, so the next one is introduction or current work. Why do this? Why do this research? So the first thing, what is the question you're trying to solve? Or the answer to the problem that you're trying to solve. Here you should reference some articles that describe the issue and the problem it might cause. This may not even be an article that proposes a solution. It could just be an article that talks about climate change without offering any climate change solution. Here are some of the problems. We see CO2 levels arising above the 400 parts per million limit. It has some data in it. It has something you can quote, but it doesn't have a solution. That's okay. This is the problem you're trying to solve. You should describe the question fully yet concisely. Be specific about what the issue is. You should also describe the state of current research. So this is where we're getting into the competitive landscape a little bit, where it falls short and why your research is needed to answer the question or solve the problem. So the introduction current work also includes the competitive landscape, if I haven't made that clear already. You may also state in general terms how you plan to go about working on the problem. This part should be a very brief outline and segue into the next section. So you're just going to have an outline of this is what we plan to do. And then in the next section, you're going to dive into describing what you're going to do to solve the problem. So this should state exactly how you plan to conduct your research. It's intended for 4 audiences. Your sponsor, who wants to know your project is feasible. So you're going to take this proposal and you're going to take it to your sponsor, presumably your research advisor. He is going to read it and say, this is not going to work. You need to do something else. Or if you wrote it well, your sponsor is going to say, I understand every bit about this, and I think it's a great idea. You should go ahead on. Somewhere in the middle is, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea, but it seems like it has a lot of holes in it. Could you update your proposal to include how you're going to deal with A, B, and C? So that's to the sponsor. To reviewers who will want to grade the final results and understand how you got them. The important part about this is that you're not just going to present your results to your reviewers when you go to get your final report peer reviewed. You are also going to show them how you got that so that they have that your final results are reasonable. The third audience is your project team. This is going to be a standard operating procedure for your project team. It's going to be their guidepost. It's going to be their cookbook, their recipe book. It's going to tell them what they need to do next to conduct the research. And then finally, any other researchers who want to repeat and verify your work. The hallmark of scientific research is repeatability. And the ongoing requirement is that if anyone conducts a scientific experiment that they believe is true and valid, they need to explain it in enough detail so that a disinterested person could repeat the experiment and get the same result. So if you're collecting and analyzing data, what data you're collecting and what analytical processes you use, you need to get those best fit diagrams and the correlation values and stuff like that. If you're conducting a physical experiment, all the starting materials, the processes you use, and the assay processes you use to verify that the product is working right.
快开会啦。哦，
Okay, you don't need to do these now when you're writing the proposal, but you will be eventually adding this to get your proposal from a proposal to a report. Results. You don't have to include this in the proposal, but you should describe what you hope to show. Do not foresee any conclusions. In other words, don't say, I hope to prove that the world is a cube. What you want to say is, I want to show what shape the world is. Future work. Really leave this out until you do the final report. References and bibliography. Each item that you found in your literature survey should be listed in your bibliography. See the slide on avoiding plagiarism. You should actually do the plagiarism check before you start. What am I going to write? Let me make sure I do it right. And then you should do the plagiarism check when you finish. Did I accidentally include some information from elsewhere that I didn't reference? Here, let me put the reference into that. That's usually the best way to fix plagiarism. Each item should be numbered with a number in brackets so that you can refer to it in the text of the proposal. Do not rely on opinion pieces or unreviewed article for factual information. You can include them in the reference, just do not quote them as an authoritative source. You can quote them if you feel the need, but you need to make sure that you point out that it's only a opinion or this was so-and-so's viewpoint. Unless the field is very small and there are very few people working in it, more references is good. If you can only find a few, make sure they are high quality and representative. So I had one very technical research experiment that my people were doing. And it turned out that they could only find maybe 3 articles in the whole field. The good news is every one of these was a peer-reviewed article. All 3 of the articles discussed the same problem. All 3 of the groups had slightly different problems with it. And so we could put together something, but it's very rare that you're going to have fewer than a dozen or even at the very minimum, a half a dozen articles. Okay. What I didn't say. Anything about style or grammar. I did not say in here, I'm going to make a few perhaps unwarranted assumptions that even if you're English as a second language speaker, you probably write pretty good English. In any case, there are a number of style guides. If you are writing for a specific publication, see if they have a style guide. For example, there is an American Chemical Society style guide. So if you're going to submit to American Chemical Society, you should use their style guide. There's a Physical Review style guide. And here I did it again. If you can't find a style guide in the area you're working, the Modern Language Association style guide is as good as it. The other thing that you should do is be consistent with verb, tense, and noun agreement. So don't use partially future tense, past tense, present tense randomly, and don't use singular verbs with plural nouns and vice versa. If you have a question, read it out loud before you submit it. That will catch stuff that just reading alone won't do. Okay, so questions. Do I have any questions from the audience?
Can we access this like PowerPoint anywhere? Or like where can we access this for like future reference?
David or Edward, is there some place that we can post this so that people could use it?
Yes, there should be. We'll make it happen.
Okay. I have sent a copy to David, and I believe Edward and Rob, you both have a copy too. If you need another copy, let me know. So yes, we can. Vaibhav, are you? Do you have any other questions?
So regarding this, the guides provided for the. Oh, okay, yeah. I think Gia has asked my questions as well. So how would you know what sort of citation format to use? Would that be part of the guide, or is it that certain fields have different citation styles or something like that?
Okay, I gave you a particular format to use. Most of the places that we publish will accept that. If you're publishing at a particular place, look in their style format thing. Look at their URL, like JYI for authors or JHSS for authors. See if there's anything in there that specifically describes how the references should be formatted. If there is, follow their format. If there isn't, use the format that I outlined in this presentation.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You say, for the introduction, how do you make sure you have covered the problem current works sufficiently? Okay, so I think the problem is not going to be sufficient coverage. It's going to be narrowing it down to what you want. So first, you're going to look at the problem. And you're going to say, what problem are we trying to solve? You're going to use the problem to figure out what you're going to use the problem and search on the internet for any current work that's going on. And you are going to keep the ones that are related to your problem. You're going to get a lot of hits. And some of them are going to be exactly what you're working on. Some of them are going to be working on something similar. And some of them are only going to be working on tangentially related stuff. And then some are going to be, there's a keyword in it that match, and it's really a different problem. If it's a different problem, or if it's so tangentially related that it really doesn't impact your research, then you could leave it out. If it looks like what you're doing, or if you are, if it looks like what you're doing, then you want to include that in your references, and you want to say something about it. To make sure you've got it right. Did that help, Erica? Did that help you understand what to put in the intro and current work? It gets a lot easier when you've done it a couple of times. You can keep the brand and throw away the chaff more quickly. All right. Do I have any more questions?
Do you have any advice on balancing being concise but also like staying thorough when writing these types of proposals?
the best advice I can give to you is to have somebody read it other than the author. You have 5, 6, 7 people in your group. Everybody should read it and say, does this wording speak to me? That's usually the easiest way. If you have someone in your group who is a very, everybody in the group doesn't write with the same degree. Some people use more words than others. If you have someone who can write clearly and use fewer words, then you have that person in the group write. Or maybe even on different parts, different people can be more concise about different parts. Some people can describe the problem more concisely. Other people, maybe this is the person who did the analysis work and the major part of the literature review and has that really down well and can explain it really well in a few words. Maybe somebody else can write the materials and methods because they typically do a lot of what's the word? Like if it's a synthesis, if they're the synthesis person and they do all this stuff and they know how to exactly explain how this particular drug was synthesized, they can write that up in fewer words. So it may be a matter of sharing the writing among the people who are best at each part, and it's also a part of getting... Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea for that. So, any more questions on the writing of the research proposal or how that goes into providing the final research report? Okay, in that case, my next slide is the most important one. Go write. You know how to do it, now go do it.